But first, this morning, some breaking news. At least 23 people are dead after a devastating tornado in Mississippi. The twister touching down as thunderstorms swept across the state late last night. The path of destruction said to be more than 100 miles long. We will keep you posted on this developing and very, very sad story. And meantime, we are also talking about President Trump, because last night he was on with our own Rob Schmidt, talking, of course, about the investigation against him by DA Alvin Bragg. Now, the nation and the world bracing for the possible indictment of the former president. Will it happen, or is the case falling apart with the Manhattan DA? Well, joining us now to talk about all of this is Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton. Ken, some huge developments happening this week with Robert Costello, who was the attorney one time for Michael Cohen. And he went in before the grand jury. And I talked with him earlier in the week. He said the grand jurors were just shaking their head in disbelief when he said, listen, I have evidence here that what Michael Cohen is saying is not the truth. Do you think he turned this case around? And is it enough to maybe stop Alvin Bragg from even seeking a potential indictment?
Yeah, I think there's a very good chance of that. But, you know, every grand jury is different. Every DA is different. You don't really know what the political bent here is, either with the grand jury or with this DA. So we really won't know until they either don't do anything or they move forward.
Yeah, what do you think? What's your inclination? Because you're familiar with a number of grand jury proceedings. You've covered them. They've followed them a lot in the state as a big lawmaker there. Do you think that Alvin Bragg will still proceed? That maybe he's sort of in it too deep, if you will, and if he doesn't go forward or at least give it to the grand jury, maybe the grand jury gives him an out. Maybe he presents it to the grand jury and they say, oh, it's not. And then he can say, oh, well, I still presented it to the grand jury.
Well, certainly Costello created some issues both for the grand jury and for this DA. I would have to say, I would, if I were in his position, I certainly wouldn't want to take it forward. Obviously, he can always take it to a grand jury and then blame it on them, whatever happens. And that may be what he ultimately does, is just send it to the grand jury and let them make that call. Hopefully, they've heard all testimony and they'll do the right thing.
Do you believe he may bring in somebody else to try to counterclaim Robert Costello? I thought it was really fascinating, and I can't wait to get your take on this, Ken. In terms of, it sounded like, okay, Costello goes in at the beginning part of the week, and he comes out and tells the press. Of course, the proceedings are supposed to be private, but he came out, and we've heard so many leaks from this grand jury. By the way, I've never seen a grand jury leak so much all along. But he comes out and says, okay, I sent the case into a tailspin. They clearly, saw a different side of the story than they had been seeing before this. But then suddenly it's supposed to happen again. They're supposed to convene again on Wednesday. They don't. Then on Thursday, they don't. And it seems to be these last minute decisions. How do you read that? What do you think Alvin Bragg is now planning?
Look, if he has anybody else and if he really wants to go forward with this, he needs to bring somebody else in that somewhat overrides Costello's testimony. Because right now, it looks like they've got Cohen sort of looking at least neutralize, potentially even dismiss his testimony based on the fact that Costello basically said he wasn't telling the truth, and he never tells the truth. That's has a real severe impact on the credibility of their star witness. So I truly believe they need somebody else. And even with that, they still have Costello's testimony that obviously bolsters the president's story.
Now, you know what's interesting? Costello said that he has, I think it's like 321 communications, texts and emails. And the grand jury, he said, had only been presented like 6 from Cohen. So a very sort of thin slice. And if you look at it, it's still, though, the burden of the jury, correct, to ask for those extra emails. So I'm wondering, did they come back? If you were on the jury, don't you think if I was sitting on the jury and suddenly I heard a very different version that I had been hearing all along, I would probably say, hey, can we see those emails that guy who used to work in the Southern District of New York It's not like Robert Costello is just some guy they pulled off the street. This is a guy, a very well-known attorney, came in very passionate, again, was a big prosecutor as well. Don't you think the grand jury would ask for that information? Could that be part of what's happening now?
Look, if I were in a grand jury, I would want to know the truth, and I would want to see those emails, and I would already be inclined to have some lack of credibility for the DA in my mind because I didn't know about those. I had to find out from another witness. That's something the DA should have disclosed, because the goal of the DA should be justice, and justice demands that all sides of the story be told. When you have a DA that only provides a few of the total emails, and the others may be exculpatory or at least help the person that they're looking into, and the grand jury doesn't know that, I would think as a grand juror that would create a problem for me trusting what the DA is trying to do here.
What do you also take from some of these reports that Alvin Bragg is sort of saying, well, you know, we never said Trump was necessarily going to be arrested. I don't know where Trump is coming from with that, basically, from Alvin Bragg. On the other hand, you don't go before a grand jury. You don't have Michael Cohen and Stormy Daniels and all these other people go before the grand jury. If your intent is not to go for an indictment, you don't just do it for the fun of it, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, who knows what day he was going to do it, but certainly if you're putting all this information, you put Cohen in front of him, you put Costello there, you're looking to try to do something. And my guess is the DA was trying to get an indictment and arrest President Trump.
Yeah, that's what it looks like. What do you make of the war of words? And do you think this week we will see some action? Because he did have those two sudden last-minute changes last week, but everybody's anticipating there's going to be something dramatic this weekend.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised, but again, if I was on the grand jury, I would wonder about the sort of direction of this if I hadn't been given all the information, and I would start questioning whether the DA was doing that on purpose. Certainly, he could have provided that information. Why? I would be asking the DA, why didn't you provide all the information? If you're trying to be fair, and this is a real case, why wouldn't you give us all the information up front instead of finding out from another witness that it's available? So I would have a real problem as a grand juror going forward with this.
Yeah, I would too. I would say, wait a minute, I at least want to see those emails, see what's going on, and pursue that line of questioning. And maybe we'll find out if they did, and maybe that's what's been the holdup here too as well. Ken Paxton, thank you very, very much. We really, really appreciate it.
All right, thank you. Have a great day.
And also, by the way, Ken, before we let you go, Ken, come back. I want to thank you also for your support during our disagreement with DirecTV. We really appreciate all your support that you gave us.
Absolutely. Glad they're working with you guys.
Thank you very, very much.